everyone. My name is Dr. Rolanda Anderson, and I am the Assessment and Research Associate here in the Office of Institutional Effectiveness and Research here at Tougaloo College. The reason for this video is to give me an opportunity to go over all of the 8 components with you all. I know for many of you, this is just going to be a refresher. However, we do have quite a bit of changes with our IE coordinator, so some of this information will be new to some of you all. And just to kind of spice things up just a little bit, I did add some information in here, just some tidbits of information, of course, from a data analysis credentialing class that I'm taking from UNCF. So I just kind of wanted to include that information as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Hello everyone. I wanted to remind you of something before moving forward. I wanted to remind you of those recommendations that you wrote in the recommendation section in your assessment plan that you completed back in May. I want you to go back to that recommendation section. I want you to look at all of the recommendations that you suggested for your department and your offices, and I want you to look at that list to see how many of those recommendations that you can actually complete or work on this upcoming year. Now, for those of you that have 5 to 10 different recommendations, you may not be able to do all of these this year. So you will pick out how many of those recommendations that you're going to actually work on this year. However, that does not mean you're not going to go back on a later date to look at those recommendations and pick those recommendations up and work on them, like I said, on a later date. However, you do need to pick out which recommendations you can work on for this upcoming year. So you would take those statements and then take those recommendations to write your outcome statements. Okay, I hope that was helpful to you. If you need me or have any additional questions, please let me know. Let's move on to the training. I want to start by giving you a quote that I learned about doing this data credentialing course that I'm taking. I thought that it would be helpful to us because it gives us an understanding of outcome assessments and why we do them. So I'm going to go ahead and read this quote to you now. Outcomes assessment is the most valid way of demonstrating the effectiveness of services, programs, and facilities, especially in defending and promoting higher education, and also in meeting accreditation standards. It is also the most difficult, complex, and misunderstood of the assessment methodologies. Upcraft and Schutz, 2001. So I hope you found that quote interesting and helpful as we continue on our journey of creating assessment plans. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get started and talk about the first component of the assessment plan. Just in case some of you all don't remember, the first component that we're going to work in is the description area. And within that description area, there are 2 requirements that we have to include in that area. The first one is the mission statement. And the second one, you would list your goal or goals that you have for your department. Now, for those of you that completed your assessment plan in the dashboard last year, you can simply go into your dashboard from last year, copy and paste your mission as well as your mission statement as well as your goals, and then put that into our current dashboard, which is FY22 is what we all should be entering in our plans this year into FY22. So once again, you can go ahead and copy and paste your mission and your goals. Keep in mind that your mission statement is not going to change every year, so there's no need to try to reinvent that wheel. Go ahead and copy and paste that over, as well as your goals. Your goals should not be changing every year for your department. Keep in mind that those goals are directly related to your mission. Yes, there will be times where you may say, hey, I want to add some more goals to my mission. However, that will be something that will be done by the department and has to go through a whole line of approvals to get that done. But keep in mind that these things are not changing from year to year. So you can just simply copy and paste that over. So now we're done. We're done with the first component. So our next objective is the objective section. And within the objective section, whether you are an academic coordinator or a non-academic coordinator, we are going to use what is called the SMART approach. And we used this a lot last year, and you all did an excellent job. So S means it's going to be specific, right? You're not going to write just any old objective outcome statement, right? And it's not specific to your department. Next, you want to make sure that it's measurable. Now, I know last year when we talked about measurable, we talked mainly about making your objective statement that was measurable as it relates to creating statements that were going to provide you some type of quantifiable information, right? So you would be doing surveys, or you're going to be looking at rubrics and different exams. But you can also have qualitative information as well, like if you wanted to collect information based upon a senior thesis, or if you wanted to have interview students based upon the services that you provide in your program. So that will be some qualitative ways that you could write your statements. Okay, next we have A, which means attainable, right? You actually want to write something or create a statement that's going to be attainable. Then we have relevant. You definitely want something that's going to be relevant to your department, and then you want to have time-based. And the reason I write time-based there, or the reason this SMART approach has time-based, is because even though many of us, I know some of you probably saying, well, everybody's doing the one-year goal. That's not true for those of us who are not aware. There are some of us that are creating outcome statements that are over 2 or 3 years. So this is not something that they're going to do over 1 year. However, each year they're going to be collecting information in order to meet their ultimate goal. Okay, so please keep this in mind, that whether you are creating an academic or a non-academic statement, we are going to be using the SMART approach. So all of these elements should be within that statement. Okay, if it's written clear enough, we should be able to know that that you were able to clearly write a statement that was specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Okay, so let's go ahead and move right on to your student learning outcomes. Okay, so if you want to write a student learning outcome, now also when you're writing those student learning outcomes, make sure that you refer to your Bloom's taxonomy when working on your student learning outcomes. Keep in mind that Bloom's taxonomy is a 6-step process, so we want to make sure that we are following all of those 6 steps, or not necessarily following those, but looking at the 6 steps to see what are we expecting or wanting our students to learn and do by the end of that course. The 6 phases of learning, as it is stated in the Bloom's taxonomy guide, are remembering, recalling relevant information from long-term memory. That is the most basic. Then we have understanding. That's when you make sense of information that you have already learned. Step 3, or the next phase of learning, is applying. That's when you use knowledge gained in new ways. Analyzing, breaking the concept into parts and understand how each part is related to one another. That's analyzing. Evaluating, make a judgment based on a set of guidelines. Creating, putting information together in an innovative way. Okay, those are all of the 6 phases of Bloom's taxonomy. Let's talk about how this sentence may look, or this statement may look, when you write a outcome statement. I know for many of us, as of last year, what we did, we really just wanted to find some baseline or some baseline information, right? Because we really needed to just start from scratch to say, hey, what am I doing? What are my students learning? What is it that we need to do? So one of the examples that we used across the board was, or one of the examples that was used was a statement similar to this. 70% of students will be proficient to accomplish in all areas of the grading rubric. 70% of students will also earn a 70% or higher on all exams. So you can see here there were two options. 70% of the students will be proficient to accomplish. What that means is you're going to be using a rubric, and that rubric is going to have the columns listed: proficient, accomplished, novice, and so forth, right? So that's what that means. You're going to be using a rubric. Now, the other statement says that 70% of the students will also earn a 70% or higher on each exam item. But that question is that statement is a little bit different. That statement is referring to you giving a student a test and saying, hey, these are all the questions, and you're measuring to see how many students get each question correctly. Now, that gives you an opportunity to see at the end which areas are students most weak in. It's the learning, or which students what are their strengths, okay? Let's go ahead and create a student learning outcome statement. So a student learning outcome statement might sound like this. 75% of students will compare and contrast the features of living organisms on their final exam in fall 2022. Okay, so that's an example of a student learning outcome statement. Now let's move forward to discuss operational and administrative outcome statements. Now, the reason that a lot of these statements are created is because they are focused on satisfaction. How satisfied are people with us, right? What is the quality of service? How is that service we are providing to them? It's geared towards trackage, usage, as well as need-based and cost. Okay, those are some of the main reasons that we create student learning outcomes. As a matter of fact, some of these reasons why I learned these from my course that I'm taking. Once again, I definitely want you all to know this information that I'm learning. So once again, I do want to make sure that we all know, make sure that we are using the SMART approach with every statement. So you want to check off when you write your statement, check off to make sure that you're actually using the SMART approach. Now I'm going to give you an example of what a administrative outcome statement might sound like. One might sound like this: 100% of aid packages will be submitted to students on time in year 2021 due to the implementation of web-based award notification system. So that is an example of an outcome statement for administrative or operational services. Okay, so now let's move on to the third component. And the third component is plan. Is the plan. Now it's time for us to write that plan out, right? And please keep in mind that when we're writing these plans, we don't want to write long paragraphs. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a step-by-step plan of what it is that you and your team, those that work in your offices, are going to do to get this done, right? That's the only thing we need to know. We don't need full paragraphs, but it does need to be clear. So you should be able to write your plan at about 5 to 6 steps, okay? One of the things that your plan should not have is one person throughout all 6 of these steps doing everything. That may be the case. However, we should not be working in silos. We should be working in groups or collaborating with other members within our departments. Okay. So now if you are an academic coordinator, you might say selecting the evidence for number one. Who's going to select this evidence, and what type of evidence are you going to select, and when are you going to do it? That could be in your number one. Collecting the evidence. Who is going to collect the evidence? When is the evidence going to be collected? Scoring the evidence. Who's going to score the evidence? And when are they going to score? So if you notice, we always want to know who and when for everything, right? Analyzing the scores. Once again, who's going to analyze the scores? When are they going to do it? Is it going to be more than one person that's going to be doing it? Or is it going to be several individuals on your team? Interpreting the findings. Who is going to interpret the findings? When are they going to interpret the findings? So keep that in mind as you write down your steps. Step 1, 2, 3, down to 6. We always want to know who's going to do it, who, and when. Those are two things that we need to know for every step, right? Who's going to do it, when they're going to do it, right? Because if somebody ends up leaving off of your team or somebody gets switched out, we still need, somebody else needs to be able to jump in place and work on that plan as if they have been on the team the whole time, right? So that's the point with that. When are they going to interpret the findings? When and who? And when are next steps going to be taken? Now, if you are a non-academic coordinator, your plan may look a little bit different. Your number one may be, what are you going to track? Number 2, conducting the actions to obtain the goal. Who is going to conduct these actions? Review the numbers. When are these numbers going to be reviewed, and who are going to review the numbers? Interpreting the numbers. Who is going to interpret the numbers? When are the numbers going to be interpreted? Taking actions as needed. Okay, that's when you get down to figuring out what are you going to do when you start writing your recommendation section. But when are you going to take action? When are those actions going to take place? Okay, so that's what we need to write in the plan. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. And so the next step is the assessment. And what I mean by assessment is the assessment tool. What assessment tool are you going to use? Right? There's so many different tools that you can use. You can use a rubric, you can use a survey, you can look at thesis statements. There are an abundance of different type of assessment methods you can use. I actually have a list of them here. You can use rubrics, surveys, tests and exams, interviews, observations and documents, focus groups, case studies, portfolios, benchmarking, peer reviews, external reviews, self-evaluations, and longitudinal tracking. So those are just some of the assessment tools or methods that you can use to assess your data. However, whatever you decide to use within the assessment area, the only thing that we ask you to do is to embed the assessment tool within the dashboard. Do not attach the plan or the tool within the dashboard. Embed it there so when the screen is open, when your dashboard is open, your document automatically pops up for us to see. So make sure that you definitely embed that. And everyone should have something to embed. Keep in mind, if you don't have just a regular survey, if you're using an Excel file that you created, some type of table that you're working on in Excel, please feel free to upload an example of the tool that you're going to be using to collect your data, okay? Please keep in mind that this assessment tool has to align with this outcome statement. if the outcome statement and this assessment tool does not align, it's not gonna work. So if you're saying that you're going to be assessing biology students scores on their final exam, then I'm going to be expecting to see an exam here. Okay, I shouldn't see a satisfaction survey for biology students. I should be looking at the exam, because you said, if you said you're going to be assessing students' exam scores, then I should be looking at an exam here. So just make sure that everything aligns. Everything must align in all 8 components. Every component needs to align with the next component, okay? If not, it's not gonna work. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the fifth component, is the evidence component. Now, this one may be one of the easiest ones to some of us, because if you just created a survey or you did an exam or whatever it was that you did, you have your assessment tool, you've been collecting this information all year or for however many months you were going to assess this, right? So the only thing you're going to do is print off your data. Some information is already calculates it for you. Some programs do, depending on what it is that you're going to be using. So the only thing you would do is you can either do a print screen or copy and paste your evidence in this section. So the only thing you would do is just copy and paste. If the system created the document for you, all you would do is copy and paste that evidence in this area. And once again, do not attach. Do not attach. What I want to see here is this document. As soon as I pull it up, I should be able to see exactly, I should be able to see your evidence, right? And this evidence that you have here should align with this assessment tool. Whatever you said your assessment tool was, so once again, if you were looking at a biology exam, then I would need to see evidence relating to this biology exam. That's what I need to see. Or once again, if this was an administrative outcome and you were giving out, if you said that 100% of your students were going to receive their financial aid packets because of this new web-based system, then you had a copy of the assessment tool that you was going to use here. Now here, the only thing that I should see is a table here telling me, that's showing me the evidence. That's the only thing that I would want to see here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move on to component 6. So for component 6, now we're going to go to the results. I may need to go up a little bit further. I'm not sure. I think I'm running out of room. So for component 6, we're going to be talking about the results. Now, I've already, if you would like to, which I think it would benefit us, is for us to continue using those tables that was already populated into that. For some of you, well, I think almost all of you use those tables that was created. And here is an example of them. I'm not really sure if you can see it here, but if you could go ahead and copy and paste that information from your 2021 dashboard, and I'll probably just send you blank templates, so don't worry about that. I'll send you blank templates so you can just upload the new template into your dashboard as you move forward, okay? So, but in the results section, it's just simply asking, did you achieve or did you not achieve your goal? That's the only thing you pretty much have to do here. Yes or no? More than likely, within your statement, you should only be writing on one side. Okay? Unless you had some type of outcome statement that was kind of like 2 parts. And so you may have to do write something on both sides, but that's really not recommended. You really want to write on one side. Did you meet the outcome? Did you meet the results, or did you not meet the results? I personally prefer using the KISS method. I always tell myself, hey, am I using the KISS method? Because if I am using that method, for me, I know that that works. I won't go into detail of explaining what the KISS method is, but that's something that I love to use in my own teaching, in the way that I do things. So make sure that for the results section, you just simply state, did you meet the goal? Did you not meet the goal? If you said that you was going to send out 100% of the packets to the students and you only got 80%, then you could mark in the mark goal and say only 80% of students receive packets. And that's it. I know that's spelling this out, but that's pretty much all you would have to write in that spot. You don't have to write anything on the other side because you did not meet that, you did not meet your outcome. Okay? And that's simply it, right? So then we'll move on to component 7. And within component 7, that's our analysis. And within this section, this component requires us to do a little bit more thinking. Once again, I would like for us to use that same template that you used last year. And I'm going to send out the whole packet again because we have a lot, the whole template. I'm not sure if I sent out the whole template to everyone last year, but I'm going to send it out again. I'm sure I probably did because most of you had it in your dashboard. But since we have so many new people, I'm going to go ahead and resend that out. But this is what it looks like. Hopefully you all can see it. But for the results section, this is when you talk about your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. Or you can, some people just say the SWOT, right? A lot of us are familiar with that. You talk about your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so once you talk about all of those 4 and all of these, this SWOT, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are all related to this outcome that you're working on, right? What were some of the strengths? Were everybody on board? Was most of the team working together to get this done? Did you have all of the professional development that you need? Could that be your strength? If so, then put that there. Also, what if it was a weakness? What if everybody was not trained? What if they didn't get the training that they need? What if they didn't have the tools that they needed? Then that's definitely a weakness. What opportunities could you have? What opportunities have you realized now that you could use or that you need in order to enhance your department, right? Or to enhance student learning. So what opportunities did you find? Okay. Maybe you learned that a lot of teachers or a lot of members within your departments have a lot more skills that you were using. So you realize, oh wow, we could have, this person has this skill, that person has that skill, and you realize we could have done a lot more if we had utilized the team that we have, because they have a lot more skill than what we initially thought. Okay, then you might want to talk about any threats. What were some of the threats? Were funding a threat? Did you not have the funds to carry out your goal? Was there a pandemic that occurred so you wasn't able to follow it through the way you had initially intended on doing? So yeah, so now let's go ahead. So once you write all that in your analysis section, keep in mind that you're probably going to have more than 1 or 2. I really enjoyed looking at the analysis that you all did last year. I mean, some of you really wrote a lot of stuff down, and I was really excited and eager to read some of the things that you all wrote in the analysis section. So keep up the good work. Okay, so now we move on to the last one, and that is the recommendation section. Now within this section, this is what you're going to be writing. What happened? What do you recommend you do? What if you didn't meet your goal? Right? So what do you recommend you do the following year? What do you recommend that you do next year because you didn't meet this goal? You're going to work a little bit harder. You're going to be a little bit more creative. You might bring other team members in that wasn't on the team before to assist you with getting this done. What are you going to do? Now, let's drill this back. Let's say you did not meet your goal last year. A lot of us were just creating a lot of baseline information, right? So with that being said, we collect a lot of basic information so we could learn about our departments, which was really great. So I'm really excited about that. So now what we should be doing with this recommendation section here that we actually completed in 2021, that the last year's assessment plan that we did, we need to go back, look at the recommendation section, and those are some of the things that we need to be working on this year when we create our outcome statements. Okay, so keep that in mind. You must look at your recommendation section when you're writing your outcome statements for this year. However, you go back to last year in order to create that plan, and then this year you'll be writing new recommendations. However, please keep in mind, I am totally aware that there is almost no way that, for some of you all, you wrote a lot of recommendations down. So I was really glad to see it, but there's no way for all that to be done the next year. So please don't try to make that, don't worry about that, okay? Just do what you can, but gradually move towards working on all of those recommendations to close that loop eventually. And closing that loop, it may take more than a year. It may take more than 2 years. Things don't happen overnight. So the only thing that we should be concerned with is that we're constantly moving forward. I really enjoyed going over all this information with you all today. And please set up a meeting with me if you feel like you need some additional help. I am always here to service you with any type of assistance that you need with assessment planning. Thanks and have a great day. Bye-bye.